welcome to my retro watches. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mike, and if you haven't gathered by now, this video is all about the Seiko Pogue, the first Seiko or the first automatic watch in space. That's right, in space, hence the reason for the parody of Star Wars on my intro there. I really do hope you enjoyed that. It was a bit of a fun to make. So unusually for me, I'm filming this the wrong way around because the intro I'm filming and I've actually done the project. I have the watch on my arm here now, and you're going to see everything I did to get this to the condition it's in right now. There's a few special mentions. There's a guy called Simon Wilkinson, a friend of mine, an absolute wizard at Seikos, and he will service people's Seiko. So if you do want to get hold of him, I can pass on his details, no problem at all. He helped me with this by giving me lots of case parts and parts that I couldn't get hold of. And then there was a guy called Michael Kipp, and he also helped me to get hold of some aftermarket parts from a guy called Seikosis, who's also on eBay, who does the best aftermarket parts. Yes, we are using some aftermarket parts. Oh, I know, but wait till you see them because they're really, really good quality, and I think you'll be impressed. So for me, this is a bit of a grail watch. It's something I've been aspiring to for quite a while. Early this year, another friend of mine, a guy called Ian Margetts, who watches the channel, I bumped into him at a watch fair in the UK, and he was wearing his original 6139 6005, which is the proper Pogue reference. That is the authentic one, not the 6002, which is what I'm going to be building here, by the way. So he had the original one on. I tried it on and I thought, wow, this is amazing. I really do like it on the wrist. But the price is a bit too high for where I sit in the market. I tend to like to buy things at the bottom, and I also like to add value by trying to work on them. I don't like just to buy a watch and put it on the wrist. I want to take it apart, I want to rebuild it, I want to fix problems, or I want to restore it. That's where I get my that's where my interest is at its heart. So to actually be able to build my own Grail watch from scratch has been absolutely fantastic for me. I've loved every minute of it. So this video is going to show you everything I did from restoring a case right up to fitting the movement, and then obviously showing you all the aftermarket parts and how the finished look is, because it's absolutely stunning, and I hope you will agree. So with that all in mind and that said, because I could talk for ages and I really don't want to, because this video is going to be a long one. I will warn you about that. It will be at least an hour long. Sorry about that. Another video for an hour, I know. So well, let's just cut to the bench and let's just crack on straight with it. So I do hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you at the end. Okay, so here is the case, guys, and I'm a little bit worried about this. It doesn't look too bad, and the purists of course would say to leave well alone, but I do like my casework, and as this is going to have literally a new everything, so new dial, bezel, bracelet, I'd like to improve this case. And the immediate problem is trying to replicate this circular or this sort of round finish that you can see. Maybe if I bring it a bit closer. Now a lot of this is covered by the bezel, and I've done something similar and I've managed to improve it, but it's never absolutely perfect. But I want to do it because there's a lot of dinks and dents around the edge, and that is because obviously it's how it's been worn. So this side, I guess this is a right-handed person, it seems to have more blisters and dents and things on that side than it does on this. I will re-polish the sides, try and get some of the scratches out. This is always a concern for me on Seikos, this nice little sort of radius, whatever you want to call it, and it's quite difficult to get in there, so I tend to just tape that off, certainly when I come to polish, with some Captain tape, and concentrate mainly on that bit. At least this is close to the skin, so you won't see it. Around here again, there's plenty of scratches, as you can see. So I certainly want to brighten that up, if not remove all of them. And it is a really, really time-consuming job. So I estimate this case might take me quite a few hours. It might be over a few days of my spare time. And finally, it's these are the hardest part, I think, by far. So they are lugs that are supposed to be highly polished, and you run the risk of these because they're flat, of rounding them. And I haven't got a complete solution. Excuse me, I haven't got a complete solution. I've got a lapping plate which I may use, but the trouble with that is this part where the bezel sits on is raised, so when you put it on, here's a bit of flat steel for instance, so when you put it on at the angle, which is somewhere near there, that bit of where the bezel goes, you run the risk of it touching and then grinding it off. So a bit of thinking on that one, because that's the bit that I really do need to improve, because ironically that is the worst part of the case by a long shot. So here we are with a bit of an update. It's actually day 2. I gave up for the night last night, and I've basically roughed it out using the sticks that you saw briefly in the video there, and mainly it's about, I'm trying to think what coarseness is, it's about 400 grit, something like that to start with. Just trying to see if I can get this to focus for you. So on here I've managed to remove all the scratches there about. Obviously I'm putting scratches in it, but they're a bit finer. And on the top I've been filing away. I've just been trialing actually, so it does look a bit better how to replicate the finish. There is a few pits. There's one in one of these corners. I can't see which one it is on camera. It's just too deep to get out. I'd be there for too long trying to take it out, and I could take the whole thing out of shape, which I don't want to do. But it is remarkably better. And then the ends as well, I don't know whether you can see that. With the ends, I've got the stick, this is a fine one so it's not very good, but just laid it and held it on the angle where I'm not touching that. It's hard for me to do on camera here, and filed it like that, and that has got rid of all of the major lines, scratches. What you can see now is obviously the coarseness of the grain, or the grit should I say. Those ones are a little bit better. I've still got to get them a lot better yet before I can polish them, because they want to be polished with the minimum of effort, because I run the risk of rounding the edges off. On this edge I've taken it one step further. My hands are still a bit greasy unfortunately, so this is actually getting quite shiny, you can see it now. And what I've done there is I started with the 400 with the sticks, and then I've moved by hand. So I've got a little bit here, this is 600, and then I've gone from 600 to 800, and then this one, it doesn't show it on this one, but this is 1200. And when you're doing it by hand, I've found, because obviously what you want to do is keep this sharp edge. So I've got all the major dinks out except for one. There was one really big one which I now can't see in this light, but there is one big one on that side somewhere, just there I think, there, which I can't get all the way out. But to try and keep the lines, because everybody says, oh, you know, watches get over polished, but if you take your time you should be okay. And the way to keep certainly this top line is not to overlap it. So if you've got emery, fold it up. I don't really want to do this right this second, but you know what I mean, don't overlap the edges. So don't come over here, keep it really flat to it, and then that way you're going to keep that edge presentable. I've still got this added problem of this bit down here. Now it's going to look a bit different right now, because obviously this is I've been filing away at this and I've not touched this at all, and I won't really, I'll just polish that at the end. And what scratches are in there, the autofocus is struggling here. I'll polish that as best I can at the end, you do run the risk, like I say, of losing this, and I really don't want to. So I've done all that, and then I have this special sponge from Norton, and basically it's well, it says there it's a 1200 to 1500 grit. It actually isn't. It's 120 grit paper, but because it's on a sponge you don't apply the pressure. It's really clever stuff, and I just cut it into a little square like that, and again just following those contours, and then this gives it this quite a good shine. It doesn't come through on camera very well, but it's a lot better, certainly a lot better than this. So I've now got to repeat the procedure on this side. So I've got to come down the grits on this side, obviously finish with that to get it looking as good as that one, and then we're kind of ready for polishing on those. The tops here I might contemplate lapping. I'll try on camera in a bit and see how we get on. So on with the manual scratching again. Okay, so I've been at it for a bit longer, and now again you're not going to see very well because I've got really greasy fingers, but for all the case, all the sides here are all the same now, ready for polish. And I've started on the lugs. I'm trying to see which end I've done these ones. As you can see, they're quite shiny, and all I've been doing with that, I did contemplate lapping them, but I'm just worried about this rim. So it's just a case of using the sticks and line them. Difficult for me to do this while I'm looking at the camera at the same time, but just line them like that, and I'm going to be passing these over. And I've got lots of different grades. These ones come from Cousins, and they have some strange numbers on them, like 0, 1G, 30, and 60. This one's the finest, basically. So you just keep coming down and down and down, and then hopefully these should be quite shiny at the end of it. Again, ready for polishing. So I'm going to continue with that now, and then hopefully we are then ready to, like I say, put it on the polisher and move on to the next bit. Day 3, guys, and I've finished with the sides. I've got them as good as I can already, so it's now ready for polishing. So I've covered the areas I don't want to polish in Kapton tape, including the little lugs at the moment. Those I'll probably do with the Dremel at a later stage, just to touch up. Certainly I think this machine, as much as this machine is very small, it'd be a bit too vicious for it really. And I've tried to tape off a little bit of that area there, just to try and limit what we might lose. We might not lose any. I might be just being a bit paranoid, but we'll soon find out. This is a tiny little machine. I got it from Lidl. It was, I think, £25, and it's been a great workhorse for me. I use it for lots of different things. You've got a taper spindle, and I have experience with some sort of polishing, in the sense that I sell this in my day job. And this is Menzerner polish, or compound should I say. And I usually use 4, but I don't need to use the 4th because this is past that stage already. So we're just going to go down the different grades, and with each grade I've got a different wheel. So this is it's called a closed stitch, so it's cotton wheel, and there are layers to it, but you can't really tell. Then you've got an open one for the next, as you can see, and then the final one is just really soft cotton, and that's just for giving it a really nice bright finish. So I'm going to kind of skip through this a little bit. I'm going to try and record some of this and show you the results as we progress. Okay, with just a couple of minutes, if that passes, you can already kind of see that's starting to shine. It does sort of look better than it might appear on camera, but I'll keep going and then obviously do that side as well and show you that at the end. So after the first stage, this is kind of what we get. Again, it doesn't really show up on camera very well, but it's really starting to shine. There's a few little bits that I'm a bit fussy about, but I'll have to keep working on those. But now will be just to change over on to the next. It's as easy as that. You just thread these on and we're good to go. So we now are really getting a good shine, but of course it's also a little bit greasy, so I'm just going to keep going, and I think at this point I'll just show you the end result. So the polishing is complete, and I don't want to show it you until I'm sure everything's okay. So I want to do the brush finish now, and I've got a little method. I'm not sure it's going to work, but I'm going to try it anyway. So again, I've taped everything. It takes absolutely ages to do this, to put all this tape on and cut it with a razor blade so it's nice and true to the edges. Sorry, my focus and everything's going crazy. And the plan is to use some Scotch-Brite. I've got this Mirka one here, and this is VF, which is very fine, but it does leave some nice marks. I always use this maroon one. And I've got this Velcro pad here, and the plan will be to basically put the watch on here, and we're going to rotate, and hopefully that will give the lines that I'm looking to achieve. It's going to be a bit of a trial error. It might go straight away, it might take a few attempts, but we'll soon find out, won't we? So after just a few turns of that, it's so hard for this camera to actually pick up what I've done. It's really annoying me now actually. There we go, so you can just kind of see it there. It's really nice and symmetrical actually. It does need a bit more passes. There you go, you can see it better in that light there. What straight away happened, I was trying to protect where the bezel goes, and it's just taking the Kapton tape straight off, which is what I thought it would. However, I don't think it's going to be that abrasive that it would have too much detrimental effect to this. I'm only going to do it a few more times, just to sort of get rid of some of the shiny bits still, and to give it a better brush finish. But overall, that is great for just, what was that, 30 seconds? Absolutely magnificent. Really, really pleased. Here we go. So I'm happy now. Hopefully you can see that a bit better in the light here now. So it's not as coarse as the original finish, but it's looking pretty nice. I think there's a couple of little marks still that I can't get out, but I think once the bezel's on, that's going to look really, really good. So overall, really pleased. Learned something new today, how to do that finish. So excellent day's work. So that is the end of day 3. Welcome to day 4, and day 4 is the rebuild of the movement. The movement is a 6139A. However, when we eventually get to put the automatic framework on, it'll say it's a 6139B because I've had to borrow that part, or rather I've had to find another part to replace it because it was missing and I could only find the B, so the B will have to do. So I'm just going to assemble the movement as best I can, and the best thing to do is to build the motions aside first and see if we can get it working before we concentrate on all the other bits and pieces. So without further ado, I'm just going to start and assemble it as best I can. First in, centre wheel. I've already oiled the jewel. Because I'm using 2 cameras here, I haven't got a third for the microscope, so you won't get the usual microscope shots on this one. But don't worry, it's nothing you've not seen before if you're a regular to the channel. I've just applied some Mobius, some Molykote DX for the barrel arbor on the main plate. And the long chronograph wheel, which is the hardest part to find on these watches should you break it, is now going to be fitted carefully. And the train bridge is always difficult on these, so I'll try on the microscope. Train bridge fitted. Now we can get some screws in. Hold it in place. Okay, everything is seated well there. Now, because it's my Grail watch, I want to be particularly careful on how I do this and give it my best work I can, really. So I now need to fit the click. Often a screw here that I don't like. Sometimes it's nice and easy. Hence the reason using some pegwood to try and hold it. Sometimes it's just awful and it doesn't want to go in at all. But there we go, click is installed. Just a touch of D5. So now the ratchet and click are in place. Put a little bit of power in the mainspring. Just to hear it go. As you can see there, the wheels are turning quite nicely. It's usually a bit off because you would want the other bridge on the top for the chronograph wheel, but that's sufficient for me. So I need to let that power run down and then I will start fitting some of the chronograph works. Oh, actually, sorry, I will put the pallet fork in next. What am I talking about? So now we're going to oil the exit jewel with Mobius 9415. Okay, now it's time to fit the pallet fork. So now I'm just putting some Molykote DX onto the post that's going to hold the crown wheel. The crown wheel is really important, takes a lot of friction, and here it goes. Normally has a little washer inside that you have to put on separately, but for whatever reason this one is actually stuck in the crown wheel itself. So I'm now going to fit the coupling levers. These are responsible for pulling up the clutch on the chronograph wheel. So when you actually stop the chronograph on this, it'll grab the clutch and it'll stop the chronograph second hand from spinning. So it's a simple operation, just like a brake really, but equally quite impressive in its design. So the coupling levers are held down by this little screw, and it's the only screw with a shoulder on it, and obviously that's just so you don't over tighten, and it just pinches the two together on the end there and still aids them to operate. I guess without the shoulder you could over tighten and cause a disaster, which is quite easy to do because there's two of the screws that look identical to this but without the shoulder. Now I'm just bringing in the hammer as well, and that will just sit on a post, and the two flat surfaces that interact with the hearts, one it's going to be on the chronograph wheel and the other on the minute recording wheel, which is I'm just fitting now. Those need to be oiled, those flat surfaces, so that it operates the hearts effectively for the flyback. So now it's time for the dreaded springs. These are the pusher springs. The first one here, which is a quite long one, it goes around a long post, is the easier of the two to fit actually. It's the more scary because I think it's got more spring power, and if you don't hold it down well enough with some pegwood or some Rodico, you're going to lose this spring very quickly and very easily. As you can see, I'm about to put the tension on, and that is quite a lot of tension. But there we go, a success. So the other one is a lot smaller, and I have lost this one, not this one on this movement, but one like this before, and it sort of swivels round two posts actually, which is quite difficult, and then you've got to bend it and loop it through onto, for want of a better word, another post. And again, quite tricky. You've got to hold it down well and hope that when you release the pegwood, it stays in place. Okay, so the bridge is on, and all that's left is to put the balance on and see if it's going to run. And there we go, we have power, and it looks pretty good straight away. So I'm really pleased and relieved because this movement hasn't ran since I've owned it. So there's a minor accomplishment. So I'll screw those in now and take it from there. So here we go, the movement is now on the time grapher, and that is the trace I'm getting after the first few minutes. I haven't regulated it. Of course, I haven't put the calendar works in or anything, and that is pretty darn good, has to be said. Of course, I've oiled the jewels where necessary, but to see one that is already got a great rate and just a little bit of a beat error is certainly unusual for me, but very pleasing at the same time. Means the cleaning has done its job, and just minimal tweaks. So fantastic, no problems at all. Really pleased. So it's now day 5, and it's time to fit the Calendar Works assembly. I would have done this all in one go, but I was working till late last night on this watch, and I don't like working too late because when you're tired you make mistakes, and I don't want to make a mistake on my Grail watch, do I? So I'm going to assemble the Calendar Works. It's very straightforward on this one. It's just like a Seiko 6119. So without further ado, let's just crack on. So the first thing is going to be the cannon pinion, but to do the cannon pinion I just need to put some D5 I like to put a little bit on the jewel there at the bottom, and then just a bit on the side, ready to receive the cannon pinion. Just going to quickly fit the keyless works. The video is slightly running a bit fast now as well. Some of this video, as you'll now notice, is voiceover and some of it's me talking live. Just thought I'd mix it up a little bit, makes it easier in editing and certainly when I'm trying to build as well, where I need to concentrate. And greasing the hole there where the setting lever is going to go. Setting lever takes a bit of punishment, so you want to put plenty of grease in there. And again, I think it's the Molykote DX that I've used. So we'll bring in the yoke. And that's it, you move the setting lever out the way a bit so it's all lined up. And then I can bring in the setting lever spring. Secured by two screws on this one. Now it's time for the big quick set spring, and that will go in. It's secured by a screw, and then you have to hook it around the riveted part that is part of the date quick set, and you'll see me hook that in just a second. Like so, you just bend it and click it in. Now using Mobius 9010 to oil the little post here that the wheel's going to sit on. That's the drive wheel for the date change, the normal date change. And then I'm also going to oil the pivot for the minute wheel. Here's the minute wheel. I'm going to put it on its post and then just make sure that the gears are meshed with the cannon pinion there. Got to get that right first time. It's a long strip down if you get that wrong. And then it has a little cover. So exactly the same as a Seiko 6119 and the 6106 actually. It's held in by two screws. One's really small, got a really small thread on it, and the other one equally small, but got a fatter thread on it. Don't know why it's like that, but it is. On goes the drive wheel. I now bring in the hour wheel, but I don't actually need to fit the hour wheel just yet. I'll soon realise that and remove it, because I've got to put the little intermediate driving wheel, which drives the date wheel, and that needs to go in first before I put the hour wheel in. So it's great to do the commentary over the top now and talk about my mistakes. There we go. So now they're all fitted, and we just need to put the what we call the fingers on. So it's the date finger and the day fingers. So a little plastic part, and it's got two posts underneath and one post on the top. You always make sure you put the two down, and then you've got the other finger here. I always forget which one's which. I think the top one is the date actually, and in that little V shape is where you put the post. And then it's got a screw, of course. And now I'm just testing to make sure all the gears are meshed and winding. This part here is the quick set day lever. It just interferes with the gear underneath the day wheel to operate that. Tricks of the trade here, how to get the part in the right position. Keep flipping it like a pancake on your bench. That's just the date wheel click. Goes into place, and then I just got to load the spring on it. little bit of oil there just to help it. Usual, hold it down with a bit of pegwood, pull it in with the tweezers. Job done. So there's the date ring. And now I'm just going to get it in position, gently hold it with my fingers, believe it or not, but obviously I've got my finger cots on because the part I've just fitted, it's spring loaded, and I just need to spring that so that it loads and gets into the teeth like so. Then it's a quick rush to put the cover on because you don't want to knock it because you'll knock that spring clean out really quickly. So just get the cover into position. There's 4 screws. Once the 4 screws are in, you can breathe a sigh of relief because it's not going to fall apart at that point. So the final piece of the puzzle is the day ring. Day ring has a little gear underneath it. So once you've put it in position like so, you've then just got to use an oiler and push the spring up to engage with the gear, and that's fitted properly. Just need to put the C-clip on. Once the C-clip is on, that is the movement complete. So if you were doing a 619 at this point, all the hard work is done. So you can pat yourself on the back. Great little simple movement. Just checking out there that everything still works as it should. And of course it does. Job done. Right then guys, before we go any further, I just wanted to talk about Seikosis parts that I've bought. These are aftermarket parts, but they are extremely good quality. And I have no issue buying aftermarket parts. I know this might split decision with certain people. There are always the people on the side of the fence that are original or nothing, and there are people like me who would rather have a nice looking dial than a really beat up dial on an old watch. And of course I'm trying to make this on a budget, and I'm trying to make the watch look as new as I can, so why not replace what I've got? Well, I haven't got the original dial anyway, so you know, why not do it this way? So the quality is very good. I bought the hands here. They look absolutely fantastic. Of course, the second hand here, or the second chrono hand, it's got a little lollipop on the end. You cut that off when it comes to fitting. We have the unobtainable parts, such as the crown, the spring, the little gear here which drives the inner rotating bezel, and of course the stem. Now this here is the original, and this was given to me by Simon Wilkinson. These are almost impossible to get hold of, and this is Seikosis' reproduction. And if there is only one criticism I've got when I look at these a bit closely, the finish on here is perfect. This isn't so round on the end, and when you look a bit closer it is a bit not as good as this, let's say, but it is the crown and that bit is hidden, and I guess if it's going to work, it's going to work, and that's fine. So I'm not going to lose any sleep over that, but I just thought I'd highlight that to your attention. I've also bought the gasket set. These gaskets are quite difficult because I don't know if that's going to come across on camera. They have a little recess in them where the glass goes, and I've never been able to get hold of these. The bezel and the inner rotating bezel. The bezel itself, I have an original bezel here from Simon Wilkinson, and of course the one from Seikosis. They are virtually exactly the same, and you know, great. I've got a new one. This watch is going to look as good. I'm trying to make it look as good as new. I'm really pleased about that. And again, the inner rotating bezel is printed really nicely and is good quality. I've also bought the bracelet. He has two forms of bracelet. He has a cheaper version and a heavier version. Sadly, I didn't buy the heavier one, and I wish I had. But then that said, this looks absolutely perfect. It really does. It also has the end links as well. So I'm good to go with that. Also got a crystal. And I got the pushers because I need the pushers on this because they're a little bit longer than the normal 6139s. So I would highly recommend Seikosis's stuff. Let's have a look at the dial. For instance, the dial is the most amazing part, I think. I've seen lots of reproduction ones of these, only on the internet, not in the real, and they're nowhere near as nice as this is. This has got a sort of a lovely honey gold colour. It is the 70 resist dial, and what's not to like about that? You know, that sitting on this watch is going to look absolutely perfect. Okay, they are expensive, but then why not? It is the one thing that you want looking nice. I highly recommend you checking out Seikos's eBay store. I will leave a link below. He does all kinds of Seiko stuff, all different dials from different watches, and of course all the parts and some of the parts that you can't get as well. So definitely check him out. You will not be disappointed if you purchase anything from him, honestly. And this is you know, I'm not being sponsored by him or anything at all. I've bought these parts legitimately, but I think he's definitely worthy of a shout out because of the quality that he's offering here is better than certainly what I have seen before. So without further ado now, we'll continue and I will get on with attaching the dial to the movement and then fitting the hands and eventually casing this watch. I'm really excited to see this this complete. I'm also a little bit nervous because the trying to fit this stem and star gear is going to be a little bit tricky, but we'll get through it. So I've already fitted the movement ring. This has a movement ring, which is metal, this bit that goes around it. Again, a very difficult part to obtain. However, I've managed to get one. And that, of course, will then be able to secure this beautiful dial. So that's going to sit on there. I need to tighten up the dial screws. So there we go, the dial is fitted and it looks absolutely wonderful if you ask me. Now I've got to fit the hands, so I've just wound the crown till the date changes so I can fit the hour and the minute hand. Okay, the chrono hands are fitted and I'm not completely happy. This has always been my nemesis on these. I haven't done that many 6309s, but every time I do, I always struggle. You have to put these on with quite a bit of force, and I was hoping because these were new hands that they would fit a little bit better. Long story short is the pivot that this sits on is a square shape and you push it into the round hole of the second hand, and that creates a key which binds it and holds it in place, because flyback can be quite a lot of force, and obviously it can go past 12, which is undesirable. So I use some Rodico here and I pushed it on and it sort of stays at 12, similar with the sub-seconds, but the sub-seconds is just a touch off and it's really drove me crazy. I've had it on and off a few times, but it seems to always want to go into that position. So I'm a bit stuck with that one at the moment. A little bit disappointed, but you live and die by the sword, and I'm always honest in my videos. I'll try and demonstrate a little bit now. We can start that off. Give it 10 seconds. Stop the chronograph. Fly back. And it's not too bad on the 12. Let's just lift that up. Hopefully you can see. It's like a second off, which is just, well, it's enough to drive you crazy, isn't it? Let's face it. Especially if the sub-seconds are going to be a little bit off as well. I don't know what to do at this stage. For the sake of the build, I think I'll just continue to build. And I may come back with fresh eyes and just see if I can tweak those at a later date, because it will drive me a little bit crazy. But I don't want to do too much at the same time, because I don't want to risk damaging that dial either. So, oh, the dilemmas of watchmaking, crazy. So I'm going to call it a day for now, and you'll catch me on another day when we continue this build. It is now day 6, and you now see that the watch is in its case, and this is in preparation for fitting the inner bezel and the crystal. Off camera, earlier on today, I've managed to get the hands on a little bit better. Hands on the 6139 always been a problem for me. It's sort of documented in the Facebook group how much I don't like lining these things up, and there we go. I've managed for once in my life to get them a bit better than normal, so I'm really pleased with that. So the cases on these, or certainly the dial side here, is quite complex. There's a lot of parts to go in. We of course got the bezel. We have, I don't really want to touch the crystal, I've cleaned it. We have the crystal, we have the gasket ring, the gasket itself, the inner rotating bezel, and a little spring as well. So quite a lot of things to get in and line up properly. However, I did find one thing. So if you remember, here is the original bezel, and I said that this one from Seikosis is absolutely identical. Well, it is. It's really good in the way it looks. However, there's one flaw, and that flaw is if you need to take this one off, and I do wonder whether I might have to take it off, because am I going to get it completely lined up first time? That is the question. But on the original, if we turn it over, I'm just going to take the autofocus. There we go. So you should see that there. There's a little cutaway. On the original, there wasn't, and I've had to make one. Fortunately, I've got a little sanding machine. Just trying to get it in the light for you. There you go. So there's my adaptation. Not as perfect as the Seiko ones, but it's going to be good enough should I need to get a knife under it, because without that, I would assume getting this off would be quite a struggle. It could mark the nice case that I've done, and equally you could end up scratching this as well. So it's important for me to try and get this on perfect first time, of course, but that is my little bit of insurance there. So we start with the spring. This is a really thin spring. I'm lucky to have that part. Again, the generosity of Simon Wilkinson is unbound, giving me the unobtainable part, and the spring is going to sit in there. I know I haven't got it seated correctly because I'm on camera, and of course when you're on camera nothing ever goes the way it should. So once that is in, we need to then put the inner rotating bezel in, and that should literally, as I just showed there, just drop straight in. And if it's in correctly, then it should have a little bit of a spring to it. I don't know whether that's coming through. Of course, that's what that spring is for. I'm not so worried about lining this up, because eventually, of course, that will be lined up properly with the when the stem's fitted. So then we need, I don't know what you would call this. It's another ring, and it's what the gasket will sit on, and that will fit in like so. And then we've got the gasket itself. I have to make sure that the gasket is clean, which it is, and it has a sort of recess, I don't know what you'd want to call it, how the gasket will sit on it, how the crystal will sit on it inside the inner ring there, and button up against the outside. And then of course we've got the crystal. Now the crystal to fit, I'm not really going to do this on camera very well. I've cleaned it. I'm going to drop it on using a bit of Rodico. But what I need to look at, and I'm not sure this is going to come through on camera, is looking at the seal itself, or the gasket itself, and making sure that the lip of the gasket is all the way around the outside edge of the crystal, because of course if it's not, and when we apply the pressure with the watch press, it's going to pinch the crystal and it's not going to sit right at all. So I'm going to do that now, make sure that that's lined up properly before we move on. So I don't know whether this idea is going to work, but I've got it kind of lined up as best I can, and I'll just use a little bit of masking tape. Now I've not tried to press too hard on the sides in case when I use the watch press it's going to pinch it, but I'm hoping that might just hold it in place enough that when we come to press it on that it's going to stay. So really wish me luck at this stage, because I'm pretty damn nervous at this point. I'll tell you what, guys, that was blooming nerve-wracking, absolutely nerve-wracking. I never like fitting crystals. There's always a worry that you're going to go disastrously wrong. This is the first watch, I think, that I've ever had to fit with the actual movement inside and the dial all showing, which gives it even more of a risk. Equally, I was expecting to hear a big click, and I didn't hear a big click at all. I've had to sort of go round a bit with the press, but it has gone down, and it does seem to have stayed in the position that I wanted it to. So I'm absolutely thrilled to bits right now, and as you can see, this thing is already looking absolutely fantastic. I'll let the secret away now. I've had to do the case back. I couldn't live with it. Yes, it does look a bit over polished with the, you see it rounding off at the anchor points there to take the case back off, but you know, it was better than the scratched face that it was. So all I've got to do now is the last job, and that is to fit the crown and the stem with the little spring and the little gear. And that's going to be an interesting job, because I've got to try and first of all work out how long the stem needs to be, and that is literally trial and error. So I can't really film that too much, because I'm just going to be trimming away, putting it back in, trimming it away, putting it back in, until eventually I get it into the right position. It's a real faff. I'm sure there's a way to measure these things and do them properly, but I don't know that yet. And so hopefully I'll show a little bit of that, but yeah, that's all I can say on it, really. I'll show you a little bit of that probably at the end. It's not the job that I've been looking forward to. Along with fitting the hands, this was my other main concern. So leaving the best till last day. Great stuff. Well, what fun I have just had. I've just struggled to get the stem, and I've finally got it right, and it's sitting nice and flush, or reasonably flush with the case. Probably could get a little fraction more actually. But when I went to move the inner rotating bezel, which now works, it didn't work. And it really drove me crazy, because I couldn't understand why that wouldn't be working. And it turned out that, if you remember right at the beginning of casing, I put in that little spring first before I put on the inner rotating bezel. Well, from process of elimination, it seems that to put in the inner rotating bezel first and then put the spring on the top, it'll then work. Without that, it doesn't work at all. And so basically I had to take all of the bezel off, and strip it right back down again and start again, which was blooming infuriating. But there you go. I should really have read the casing manual first, or at least asked some of my friends, but I kind of figured that it must sit under there, but obviously it doesn't. So I'm really pleased now that you know, when I pick it up here, I can get that bezel working. So the crown is fine. It's going to unscrew itself a little bit at the moment because I need to put some thread locker on it. So I'll put the pushers back in, and then we are done, other than putting the bracelet on. So I am absolutely jumping for joy now. That was a real nightmare of a little problem, but other than that, it's been pretty good. And look at it, it looks brilliant. So I'm really pleased. So hopefully the next shots you're going to see are of this finished watch. So I just forgot to say that I needed to fit the automatic framework, which I will do now anyway. But just if anyone's out there and watching, and perhaps they've got a 6319A framework piece like this, and maybe they need a 6139B, then I'd be keen to do a swap. I'd love to have the actual right part for the right movement, just for the whole authenticity of that particular movement. So I'm going to put these in anyway and put the rotor back on, but I just thought I'd just quickly mention that while I've got an audience. Hello and thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. I realise it was a long one, which is my videos always seem to be long nowadays, but it's just the way it seems to go. You know, building my dream watch has been a dream come true in many respects. To be able to do it from scratch rather than just buy it has been a real achievement for me, and I hope you enjoyed watching me do that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think? Do you like the look of it? Do you think I've done a good job? Are you offended by the aftermarket parts, for instance? And there's a great argument for aftermarket being fake, if you like, and everything has to be original. And I sit sort of in between there. I mean, I like the fact that you can buy aftermarket parts because the genuine stuff just isn't always available, and if it is, it's going to be really expensive, certainly for something like this. I'm definitely never going to sell this watch. It's never going to be passed off on eBay, for instance, as a genuine Seiko Pogue that's untouched and this is what it's like from new. No, that's not what I'm all about. You know, I've created something, and that's what I think aftermarket parts are for. They're for there because you can't get the originals, or you want to make it look a bit better aesthetically. And what is the harm in that? The only harm is if you're trying to be deceptive. So I would hope that none of you out there are out there to do that. That would be terrible. But you've seen what the look of this is. Really, like I say, I really do hope you enjoy it. I think the aftermarket parts are great, plus the work that I've done sets it off really well. So once again, I have to really thank especially Mr. Simon Wilkinson. He's a great friend of mine, and without him this would not have been possible at all. All I ever had was a Seiko 6319 movement. That's all I'd got, and the dream was to build this Pogue, and it's happened through the generosity of people that I know in the community, certainly in the Facebook group. Without that, this would not be happening at all. So it was really good of Simon to come to the table, for Michael Kipp to help me find Seikosis and do a deal with him for the parts. Of course, there'll be links to his eBay down below, because he deserves your attention if you are looking to do something similar as well. So please leave all your comments below. I'm going to read every single one of them, and I'll try and reply to as many as I can. Tell me your thoughts. Did you like it? Don't you like it? Give me a thumbs up if you do, because that really does help the algorithm and helps grow my channel. And stick around, because there's going to be some new content coming very soon. I've got some, hopefully got some interesting watches coming. So, you know, thanks very much as always. And there's my Pogue. You know, life is complete for me right now. So I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.